Did you do it?
Good morning, Dr. Brad.
Oh, my coffee's
no.
not
Do
ready.
you not have coffee?
I do have coffee, but
It's a ritual thing, you know.
there it is. I even cleaned my cup. See, look at that.
Wow, it's sparkly.
Super shiny.
So you rested today?
Well rested. I slept way more than I did yesterday.
So I felt really bad yesterday.
Why?
Well, because it's a big ask for you to sit there with me on this stuff. And, you know, it does make me get it done. And your contributions are quite, I mean, they're significant at this point.
You're very kind.
And so, well, it's not kind, it's just true.
Oh, okay. That's okay too.
So, you know, it's like if I'm really, if this is really boring for you or makes you tired, then maybe we need to do something different.
There you go. All right. I have my notebook now. I'm ready with my coffee and my pen.
And he didn't hear what I said.
Of course I did. I
You
simply
sure?
chose to otherwise ignore it.
Okay. Well, see, this is what you have to do when you're being managed by Dr. Brad.
Put up with silly nonsense.
So you have to understand that negative reinforcement takes on a very paternal managerial, very stoic form of enforcement.
Right. It's good. We're on page 35.
All right. So, because I'm just saying, I'd be willing to do something if it was.
No, we're good. We're making progress, and that's what counts.
Yes, we are making progress. So you're looking at your book here, and I assume that means you have stuff you want to.
No, I'm just organizing it and getting ready to prepare to make notes on this encounter.
Okay. So one update is, I think I didn't mention this yesterday, is I heard back from Ray Fleming. In a couple of weeks we'll do an interview, but I've gone over his material again, and I don't think he might argue with me. He might argue with me on density versus velocity, which is, I'm not going to get into here. In other words, what causes the discrete behavior that we see as aggregate behavior, which Einstein would falsely describe as a distortion of space, where space is just a measure, right? So you're not distorting the measure, you're distorting something, and you're distorting probably the density of the quantum background, right? So I just want to go through that particular part with him, because he does address certain velocities, and I can't tell if I can't remember. It's not like I can't, it's just that if I go to look for it, it'll spend me 2 weeks trying to find it in his video.
Right.
I can't decide if I can't remember if he's claiming that all velocities within the quantum background are limited by the permittivity and permeability, which you would consider speed of light. Right. And I can't decide if he's saying that, or if that the result of all underlying phenomenon that constitutes the quantum background is bound by that same velocity. And I would say that seems extremely unlikely. So I have to clarify that question with him. But in general, you know, in just the exchanges we had yesterday, I'm pretty confident that this argument at the level we're trying to say it, which is the logic of evolutionary computation, which is a scale, right? It's a scale question. It says above at the scale where all human, all material, all existence, right? I mean, this is interesting. All persistence of existence, right? Anything that persists inside the quantum background. Not that the quantum background will not ever persist, but that anything that persists inside of it, which we consider waves and protoparticles and particles and mass and elements, etc. So anything that persists, well, that should be, I assume that's limited by a certain speed. I don't know if that's true.
Right?
And I'm not, I think he knows it's true, and I think he'll tell me something. I have a suspicion that I could get that nobody actually knows the answer, because I don't think that the framework they're using for wave theory is correct. I think it's much more like lightning, right? And so given the velocity it's moving and what we call the lightning, I don't know if there's a difference in velocities of the stability that is created by what we call waves, particles. I don't know. Oh, go ahead.
It's a funny function because if you think about it, like everything's quantized.
Right.
So you have Planck lengths, and there's probably quantum time.
Yeah, yes.
So it's like there's what the limiting factor will be baud rate, universal baud rate.
That's interesting. I think what he'd say is that, well, waves are discrete, but time is, in other words, digital. But time is continuous, meaning analog. And I think you mean to, or I would interpret what you're saying as there's a 0 point energy in the quantum background, right? And there's a 0 point time, and there's a 0 point space, which is, in other words, there are minimum preservative, which we think is the Planck length, but I'm not sure, right?
It's just a presumption, right?
Well, I mean, the part of one of the lessons of our work that helps us understand why computation is more descriptive than mathematics, or more causally descriptive than mathematics, and has higher explanatory than mathematics, is because it appears that the universe is consistent at all levels. In other words, what it's doing is quite simple. It's just doing a hell of a lot of it, a hella fast, and a hella scale, right? I mean, there's a lot of things going on at a vast scale,
right?
So the general argument would be, if the universe always has existed, well, there's a 0 point time, which means that it's the maximum rate of change, the minimum rate of change that is possible while the quantum background persists, right? Where differences exist, right? That's the 0 point change, because what do we call time, really? We call it a relative measure of the rate of change in the background, right? I mean, so if you moving faster through more stuff, right? You're moving slower, or you're in more dense, you're changing the rate of time, but that appears to be continuous. In other words, analog instead of discrete, which we can call digital. Whereas waves are digital, right? They have to. There's thresholds before you can there's a range and a threshold right before you can actually get more. So I just want to get this around with him, and I probably should talk to Michael beforehand just to make sure I'm using the right vocabulary. One thing that did come back, which made me yummy, was that I asked him what his questions. I asked Ray what his open math was, and this just made the answer was joy. In other words, he solved an awful lot of problems. There's only one that I don't understand, and I don't know if I want to understand it because it's not relative to my work, but it's basically the top problem. Why do tops do what they do? Right? We can describe it, we actually don't know why. And this is a very interesting problem. Why does the top do that? Well, we actually don't have the faintest idea. We can describe it mathematically, but that's not a causal question. Now he understands this and I don't. And I'm like, okay, well, how much is this a week? Am I going to understand that in an hour, or am I going to understand that in a month, right? So
I hate to open the Pandora's box.
I don't need, it's like math addiction or programming addiction or the logic addiction. I don't need to be addicted to that particular problem right now. I just want to make sure I've got the fundamental logics down. So,
Right.
But he did come back and he said, well, he's working with somebody who's very good at algebraic geometry. And I just, you know, if anybody could tell me what's the way to solve this problem, I would have said it's in the space of algebraic geometry. And so when he came back with it, I realized he's again on the right track. He says that the academy basically ignores him, which we share, right? Right, but the academy's mathy, not computational, right? So the academy's mathy. Until we make the academy computational.
I don't know that it's possible now. I was on the Twitter this morning. Someone made a complaint about a professor, and I said, professoriate is a social construct,
right?
And that's the end of it. So it's just, it needs to be deconstructed and reconstructed into a new formulation because it's not appropriately constructed.
Now, in the book I didn't publish, right? The book I wrote but didn't publish because I didn't want to get anchored as a libertarian. Right. I cover each of the disciplines and mathematics, which is why it's part of the grammars, right? It's how I thought through the grammars. Mm-hmm. And math is the hardest one because they're so fucking stubborn. It's like if you could come up with a new thing that would give physicists more explanatory power, they would do it, right? I mean, if you could give it to them, like if the computational revolution continues, and it's not just me and Joshua Bach and what's his name, the guy that does Wolfram and a few others, right? If it's a broader school, then the physicists would adopt it because it would just answer more of their questions. But you get to mathematics, and that's like an archaic tradition, right? Where all these
it goes back to Newton, right?
It goes back to the Greeks, right? I mean, you've got stuff in there that is, I mean, it's mathematical Platonism, right? I mean, it's the math is a real thing, and it's like, okay, how do you rewire mathematicians? And so they say, because
you just have to train a new set.
Because, for example, the common one is, I love that Joshua Bach said this a couple weeks ago, is there are no infinities. An infinity is just, we don't know the limit, or the limit doesn't matter, right? We're in mathematics, they say there are multiple infinities. There aren't.
Okay.
There's rates at which functions produce more or less outcomes per cycle, right? I mean, but that's it. So we have a lot of reforms that have to happen out there. And I'm looking at law, and like, I can reform law. That's like achievable. Well, it might take decades, but I mean, you can reform law, right? But it's like you said, you've got to re-educate a lot of people. Math has to be reformed. You got to re-educate a new generation. Physics has to be reformed. You have to educate a new generation. So the problem you get into is, what's the resistance? In other words, why are certain domains more resistant than others? So physics and engineering is not resistant at all, right? Because it's not an abstract thing, right?
Right.
Computation is not resistant. It's the opposite. Right, it's an aggressively growth-oriented discipline.
Mm-hmm.
But mathematics is seems to be really resistant to reform, because they would say it doesn't really change what we do, it changes only how we talk about what we're doing. And I would say, yeah, except that what's happened is you guys create ideas that spill over into other fields because the way you talk about them, the way you talk about it carries to other fields.
Right.
This is where you get all the pseudoscience and science fiction nonsense. Am I being too ridiculous? No, too technical.
No, it's right, because there's an intrinsic there's a implicit languages, grammars, and logics.
Right. That's just all
that have inertia.
Well, I mean, it was hard to change theology to rational philosophy, or even to reasonable philosophy, then to rational philosophy, then to empirical philosophy, then to science and logic. And now, the end, it turns out that it's science and logic just serve to produce computation. Right. And so the end point is computation, because that's where there's no difference between the causality of what you're describing and what you're describing. In other words, it's causally complete by the time you get to computation, which is just operation.
Right.
So it's going to be fun trying to reform that. But anyway, so back to so I'm encouraged, because in a couple of weeks we'll have a little more confirmation over this. So how many bullet points do we really have here? It's basically differentiation, right? Yeah.
Okay.
It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 bullets.
Wow.
I want to know if those 9 bullets, which describes basically the ternary, the cause and ternary logic, if those 9 bullets are correct, then everything else we say afterwards is correct. And I keep looking at it and I'm like, well, this whole, the polarity thing is right, the stable, the unstable is right, the energy density or the energy capture is right. The differences and the differences are right. The question is only this this spin velocity question. And I think I don't know. I'm hoping he can answer that. Anyway, so is that enough of a warm up for that section?
That's a great warm up.
Now, have you got your coffee?
I've got my coffee.
Do you have anything you thought of that you want to talk about?
No, I did notice this, and I didn't think to mention it yesterday, which was another thing that I've noticed on the social media process, is the increasing use of triangles and ternary logics. And there are shades of what we present in this work, but they're shadows of that same construction, because I see the resemblance and the reverberations of the thought processes in there.
It spreads, right? It's like everything else we do. We put out this triangular, this mountain, right, of detail, and some gist of it spreads, so
Right.
stick around. And so
and it goes to this permeability and porosity issue.
Yeah,
it's like, how fast is it going to go through the minds?
Yeah, well, it goes based on what's the problem, does the person understands it, and how does it solve that problem. So you're always trying to find a set of Lego bricks that help that person make a connection. And it turns out that this is why 140 and above invent new ideas, 130 and above communicate new ideas, 120 and above implement ideas, right? 115 and event apply new ideas. Excuse me, event apply new ideas. In other words, generalize them, turn them into something that's usable, and then these people make use of the ideas under that, and then it just flows downhill. And so you have this every standard deviation or so, I'm just making a rough, you know,
Right. Yeah.
every standard deviation. So you have to generalize something to the scale and detail, the precision that the people are capable of using in their ordinary lives. And since like a lot of what we do is quite a big leap in demand on cognition, right? Because most people are just A versus B or sets, right? But they may understand mathematics, which is continuity or ratios. But the number of people can think in serialization by disambiguation by serialization and operationalization, producing a system of universally commensurable system of measurement, and can talk about it talk about it as the hierarchy of causes of evolutionary computation. Well, there's just not that many people that can think in that level of abstraction until we sort of do a couple of generations of turning it into general principles that roll downhill well.
Normalization, right?
You got to normalize it, so there's a lot of work. Anyway, so your journey continues. I'm trying to figure out where to start here, so that I can. So we're going to start with accumulation, then acquisition, and then we're going to cooperation. Hold on. And we have to work on a little bit on. Actually, do we? No, we don't. Okay, we're trying to get the answer of persistence of natural selection at each scale of the hierarchy of cooperations. I'm going to share my screen.
Okay.
I'm going to share my screen, and then I will show you what I'm trying to get at, and what I'm talking about or thinking about as we speak is how do I get us warmed up so we have enough context to be able to discuss it. So what we're trying to get to is here. As such, all scales reflect the increase in scale of population of time, and therefore the persistence of natural selection each scale at I didn't think of it as quantum. I didn't think of it as quantum. You just gave me a beautiful idea.
Wow.
Quantum. So the quanta problem continues across all of existence. Hold on a second. Let me see where to put this. Each state. That's it. Well, thank you for bringing up the quanta thing earlier.
Yeah, take that period out of there after marginal difference. Thank you.
That instead. No,
There you go.
I don't need to do that instead.
No, you
Okay.
didn't. There's all kind of options there, many of which are false. It's interesting to me in that one is that the persistence is a time function. And it's like the marginal difference that allows it to last long enough to compute new recombinations is kind of what it suggests. It could be inert and last long enough. Does that make sense? That won't work. So it has to have some polarization and persistence.
Yes.
Which is like reactivity, right?
Say again, let me explain.
So polarization is reactivity.
Yes.
Which is an interesting function, which is polarization with stability.
Oh, I see. You mean accumulations of polarizations, where polarizations produce stable relation, right? Persistence by stable relation. Right?
Because it is the if we look at the new combinations, the you call recombinations, new recombinations are stable relations between the elements below, right?
So when we use the term quanta, I'm not sure I don't abuse this. I don't generalize this term.
Right.
The finite quanta, define quanta. Make sure I don't generalize. No, it is already generalized. Right. It's the amount of marginal difference to cause a change in state. All right. It's the same thing as it doesn't mean it's so okay. It's just what these amounts are. They may appear to be continuous.
Oh, you're breaking up a lot.
What?
You're breaking up a lot when you just spoke.
May have been where my arm was in front of the microphone. How's that?
That's much better.
If I talk like this, does that help any?
A lot.
I don't know. I'm, I've resisted getting one of those fancy Shure microphones because they sit in your face. And this one seems to do fine, so at the level of precision we're doing, but
Right?
I'm not really sure how it magically collects sound from the environment. Or why is it that if my hand's up here, is it distorted now?
No.
No, I have no idea. Could be if I'm talking over here, that doesn't matter.
Nope.
Because it seems to pick it up. I can go make coffee and talk to you while making coffee, and that's what 10 feet away.
Right? Don't know. It's magic.
Oh, Brad, you just asked and created this question, and you're telling me you can't talk about microphones?
I can. I just choose not to.
All right, what are we going to title this?
It's the marginal difference.
I want to use quanta if I can.
That's quite an interesting premise there. Because you can have a marginal difference that's too small to make a difference.
Mhm.
And it's insignificant. It doesn't cause it to upscale.
Just correct you for the audience. You can have a difference that's marginally indifferent. But if it's a marginal difference, it's different enough. So it's one of those things where you hear
That's
that
perverse. It's what it is.
it has marginal means it's enough to change state. It's basically a transistor function. It's change state, whereas a marginal indifference says, well, it's more or less, but it's not enough.
Wait, I have to shout out to Uncle Kenny in Texas because we just talked about transistors again.
You did?
You did.
Oh, okay. I haven't heard from him in a while.
Uncle Kenny, we miss you, buddy. Leave something in the comments for us, please. And I've been holding my tongue and not talking about transistors for months and months. But since Curt broached the subject,
Oh, what's a transitioner but a ternary logic? I mean, that's what it is, right? It's a ternary logic. Plus, minus, enough to cause a change in state. I mean,
right. You want to capitalize complexity? thought you did. Yeah.
I don't know if how long it's taking me to get tired of doing that, but it's gonna be a while.
It's gonna be a minute. Just testing. What's funny about this is it's real basic. And it's like just descriptive of the geometry of the space that all of it exists in, right?
Mhm. This explains why there are grammars.
That's right.
Yeah, that's all rock solid. Why do I keep going? Oh, I keep, because it's up here, I'm trying to figure out. But now our frame is in the right place, right?
Yes.
We have a similar problem of the quanta here, right? We're increasing scales. Right?
Whoa. Say that again, please.
I whispered the F word.
Oh, I didn't hear it.
That's good.
I will see if the AI picks up on it because we just have to know. Inquiring minds want to know.
You know, I'm gonna just give myself some chuckles here. Hold on. I'm gonna pull up our yesterday meeting.
Oh, very good. This is a good little aside.
We'll get into it. Okay. I have to make it visible to everybody here. Well, we're slow, but I mean, that's normal, right? We're spending a lot of time.
Yes.
You've tried not to fall asleep while I figure out. Well, filler words is good, right? This is
That's
decrease.
pretty good.
Oh, I see. This is the general. We want to go back to this one. This is from yesterday. It doesn't tell us anything. Where is coaching? Right.
Deadly slow.
You know, so I used to get teased for speed talking because in my normal tone of voice, when I'm not considering what I'm thinking about and I'm just interacting with somebody without concentrating, I speak at around 300 words a minute, right, which is too fast, right? I mean, right now I'm using inflection, so I'm talking it down at probably 270. So okay, so I talk too fast in general, but when I learned to talk online, I learned to slow down, right? I mean, this is so. Anyway, so but that's way too slow. But that's just because it's saying
We weren't talking very much. We were
we
keeping
weren't
quiet.
talking at all. Non-inclusive terms. Here I go. sexual, you guys, stupid, fucking, sex, shit, screwing, screwed, prick, fuck.
Hey, hey, don't read them.
Well,
That's
I
all
had
we're
to
gonna
because
get
now
with these
now I get this. The only one, only I did those two.
Yeah,
These aren't bad because that's a topic, right? Oh, I
5
interrupted
interruptions.
you. No, these are where I interrupted you. That's not too bad. Where's where Brad interrupts me? And you were probably really good yesterday. Here, look at how I talk to you. Good morning, you handsome devil.
Yes, sir.
And then the white lies never hurt anybody.
That was for Martin.
Yeah, this is not really measuring anything because this is it's using a bar that doesn't tell us anything.
Right.
Did I lose you there? All right. Anything interesting in this one? Oh, we did our usual.
Right.
We were dry and boring.
He is.
It's not really that useful. What I find really useful is this thing,
Yeah.
right? And this thing. This thing's great because it figures out where all the points are in the audio.
That's very impressive.
All right. So we didn't learn very much, except I am managing to curse a little less.
It's not as obsessive
Obsessive.
or intrusive. How about that?
Oh, anti-inclusive.
There you go.
I thought being an elitist prick was pretty exclusive, non-inclusive in the first place.
I'm not a judge. I'm not the AI. I'm just a regular I.
Uh, which means you keep your opinions on such things to yourself, even though you have them.
That's probably true.
Yeah. You're a man of true character.
Oh my.
You didn't say which kind.
I know. All right, back to it.
Okay, so classes exist.
Right.
There's a tendency for people in the present age to think of economic class or income instead of social class.
Right.
Which,
social class is like an outdated form or understanding categorization.
wait. I might be saying the opposite. So this is your sexual, social, economic, political, military, market value, Right.
Right.
I don't know if military needs to be in there. Right. And they tend to so it's like classes like IQ, like demonstrated intelligence, like intelligence. Like demonstrations of intelligence. Right.
When you say scale up and down together, what do you mean by that?
So, what class is Kim Kardashian?
Okay.
She's upper proletarian, but she has a lot of money. What class is Morgan Freeman?
Right.
He's an upper class, he's a lower upper class person. Right. And that's because regardless of his, right, he's very smart, he's very competent, and he's very wise. And he has political chops.
Yes.
Because of it. We tend to listen to him. So he's lower.
Right. We take him very seriously.
So he has. So we tend to confuse the class structure, which is we have such a focus on economics after the Industrial Revolution that we tend to not look at class, and we've discussed this before in the PowerPoints. But we tend to look at it as the economics alone. When we are talking about class, we could be talking about any one of those classes, like somebody could have a very high sexual market value,
right,
but not have very high social, economic, political, military value. Somebody have a very high economic value and have absolutely no sexual market value, like Madeleine Albright. Okay, I had to do that one. I just stuck.
That should go on the rude category. I
was trying to think of who's had a lot of political power, but is
say no more.
That's just horrible. The idea is horrible. It's just horrific.
That was rude, like remarkably rude, even for you, Curt. It's just like that's no small thing. It's like Curt Doolittle being remarkably rude.
So you can have very high political value.
Yes.
Right. But low economic or social or sexual value. No, so you can have this all over the place. So when we talk about classes, we can talk about the properties within the class, the properties at which you can attain a class. In other words, some point in the trifunctional hierarchy, right? So it's
So it's like if you look at our triangle, right?
Right,
It's like that. The norm will be like the center of the diamond, right? And the classes will be deviation from the center.
correct,
The further towards the periphery of the diamond, the more the higher class function is occurring.
right. So whereas there are two sexes, there are at least three dimensions to class, right? We call them female social, the male force, female social. God damn it. My thumb's in the way. There we go. Female social, male political, and then neutral economic. Neutral economic, right? So we have those three dimensions that everybody, because those are the possible elites, right?
Right.
And so everybody's on this. So we have two dimensions, right? Although they're trying to make it so we got more, right?
Don't be rude.
Right. I'm sorry. I had to, sorry. I just, oh God, I didn't need to start that kind of conversation.
Don't even. Oh, the geometries. All right.
So institutions are also there are three D plus derivations. All right. All right. So there's well, no, they still form in. It's a hierarchy.
It's a base 3 system.
Right. Base 3. It is still 3D. And civilizations are 3D, right?
Yeah.
Right. So I had to do that before I thought about organizations. Because I bet you it's the same. So there's
They provide services within those domains that are described by the classes.
N, which is the center. Social, economic, military, political.
Yeah.
Right, so it's still 3D.
Your military is miliary.
I can't figure out how to screw that up one. And because if I list all organizations, because I got that over in the man, properties of man, they're all going to be still be 3D.
Yes. They're trying to provide services to the classes.
Problem here is that this is actually male 3D, which is female, male, and that forms the neutral.
There you go. I thought you were messing with me on that one.
No, that was just ordinary human ignorance, error, bias, stupidity, and whatever else.
Right. I'm gonna brew some coffee.
All right, go ahead.
I'll be right over there. Not
I need to get my coffee too. I'm almost out.
indeed you do.
I wouldn't have expected to sit down today and see this.
Really?
No, that was right.
Hmm. Mhm.
Oh, that fly that got into my halo light over here night before last. He's still alive in there. I don't know
Huh.
how long he's going to survive. I don't know how to get him out other than sticking a vacuum on the thing.
I see.
All right, so we're gonna clean up this here.
And here's an interesting function. If you look at this neutral, and I apologize for the interjection.
No, please go ahead.
It's like the polarities. You have the masculine and the feminine, and the neutral. The neutral is the evolutionary component.
Mhm.
That seems to operate at all the scales.
I think that's right. Is that right?
I want that to read feminine and masculine. That's the most appropriate scale name. Wants, not what's. I'm like, wow, what the hell is he saying?
I have no idea how that came out of my.
Oh, and I was processing that for a second. Looks like he's thinking about it. So much looked like English. No,
Well,
neutral. Oh my. You didn't do that on purpose. Shit. You got me cussing, man. I don't know if I hope the AI didn't pick it up. Oh my. What's funny is this evolutionary computation is a good, right? It's a persistent good, which is a weird thing because it's like a process, right? But it is its own, it's a good, which is persistent by virtue of the fact that it exists and persists. Despite the vicissitudes of the moments.
Yeah, I'm afraid I don't want to make a judgment here. My instinct is to do that.
What's that?
Well, I'm trying to do facts, but
Yeah, but it is a fact
mhm.
because it goes to the via positiva and the via negativa of the operations of the universe, right?
Mhm.
And evolutionary computation persists as a via positiva despite the via negativa.
Say that again because you had something there.
The evolutionary computation persists as a via positiva despite the via negativa of the universe, the universal's via negativa. And it's it represents the discovery universes or the existence discovers increasing complexity that persists despite the universal negativa.
Mhm.
So it's a discovery process. It's a wayfinding process.
Is that what you mean? So
Yeah, and it's increasing levels of hierarchical complexity. Scales. Like I say, it sounds like English, but it's profoundly different than English, mere English.
I can write a formula for that.
Oh, pardon me?
I can write a formula for it, except it's least right because that's a formula.
Yes.
That's the thing is all math can be written as ordinary English. We just use symbolism.
Right.
And that's one of the iffy questions about it. Um, and so, but you can write a form about what that is. Yeah, easily. We haven't finished this yet. You're gonna do this one. I'm doing something wrong here.
What are we working on? Okay. Oh yeah. Well, that's interesting because it's like that section. It's like with the purpose is to describe evolutionary computation, right? Isn't that the purpose of our activity in
Yeah,
general?
I'm just not sure it doesn't
It's very dramatic.
go here. Or then we can, or is this summarizing? Because this belongs with this. And this is a general statement.
Right?
It belongs with this. Okay. That wasn't so hard. What?
Just find it amusing.
All right, we're
What's
really
your conclusion?
sorry.
I said, what's your conclusion after that little exercise?
Well, it's it's that thing is when you start out, you got a lot of variables, and we don't
Yes.
have a lot of variables left, so. We're not doing there's a there's a there's a subtle insight that where did I just put it? This is I got it. Okay, I got it. This is where the good comes in. That's what
It's funny. I look at it like this: is the way I think about this is 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 interesting, the coincidence of the terminology with metaphysical arrangement. It's we talk about it like this in my family would talk about it as becoming. To say they would say this when you did something that was untoward, they would say that's not becoming.
Oh, I see.
Does that make sense?
Yes, I would have I got that a lot from my grandparents. That's unbecoming.
Right. That's there you go. 1M, yeah. So it's like the issue is it's not me, it's not good. Unbecoming is not good.
Here, there's
It is the metaphysical relationship it is a becoming. It's quite becoming.
it's a class thing.
Right.
Right. So
So I related to it.
no wonder I got so much of that when I was fuck.
Pardon me.
Yeah,
That's going to cost you
oh,
that mild exhortation.
it's just funny because my father's definitely from your upper class private school, multiple houses, car. The depression was easy,
Nice.
right? Definitely from that, right? And my mother's definitely from French Maine farmers, right? And then these are not peasants. These are, there are plenty of lawyers and other stuff in the family, right? I mean,
Right.
but the class thing was very different on the two sides. Because my father was actually a black sheep, right, in his family.
Right.
Right. He was the trouble kid, right? So he was always trying to measure up. So which was stupid because if he just left it alone, he would have done fine. I don't know. Anyway, you can't can't go back and fix
That's right.
the psychology of our parents. So, but it just felt weird to me because we lived in this little, they call it a city, but it's a town, right? I mean, it's only got 10,000 people in it.
Right.
The city just means a town with a charter. Anyway, so we lived this environment, and you grow up with values that are discordant with the environment you live in.
Yes,
Does that make sense?
I understand this.
Everything was fine except the oil crisis. Everything worked fine except for the oil crisis, the 70s oil crisis.
Yes.
Whatever that did, it just made my father say, this is too hard. So we sold the business.
It crunched him.
Well, I think it was a lot of things, really. It's just that, yeah, he was trying to work too hard to make everything work when there's just no control he had. You can't have control over the economy. And when you're in a business that is a luxury, basically lawn and gardens and flowers and that shit, right? I mean, that's all a luxury good. People cut on that first,
Uh,
right? And
yep.
so there's not much you can do. And so he came back to Connecticut, and then he bought another chain of stores here right after the crisis was over. But it's just a really weird thing it's just a weird thing. But I definitely got indoctrinated into the class structure, but my sisters didn't. Very weird.
So you look at it is this, and I'll go back to your page that we were just on. So when we talk about evolutionary computation is a becoming process.
Oh, I see. Well, we could go for Jesus. If we really want to get into it, I mean, it's all that matters.
Yes, sir.
That's really the end result, right?
That's right.
Adapt or evolve, adapt, discover.
Yeah. Yes.
When you can die slowly, and civilizations can not die.
Right. Civilizations and gods both can die. Oh my. You forgot agonizing.
Is this the argument? Is that it killed Rome in about 70 years, and killed the West in about 70 years by the exact same means.
That was sobering.
Well, I mean, that's the thing, is you can kill a civilization fast. Why? Because all you've got to do is you have to kill the institutions culturally. You can do that or kill the people. Can't kill the people. And how do you do that best? Through sedition. How? By sedition. And religion is the optimum. Decision by replacement. By replacement. Conquest by or sedition by religion as the optimal means of sedition. Not terribly difficult. You know, do you realize what we just did here? We got like a couple of pages. That's everything.
It kind of calls it to the T.
Okay, so we have to fill in. I got to get another cup of coffee, fresh my cup of coffee. How much time we got? We don't have that. Let's try to fill in this with those three.
These bits.
Let's try to fill in these bits.
Right?
I'm gonna get a cup of coffee.
All right, I'll move my blood.
You'll what?
I'm gonna move my blood around a little bit
Um,
out of my keister. We're back again.
How lucky a man I am to share my weekend mornings with Dr. Brad.
It's a pleasure to be here. Okay, what's the intention now? I'm gonna fill in these little spots.
Right. So we're trying to talk about natural selection.
I think we write operational statements to fill in those little dots.
We're missing this one.
Yes.
It's going to be harder than it looks.
Yeah, I think so.
But I'll say that, then we'll figure out how it's easy.
Right?
Really hard to get rid of that bold thing. So let's see if we can avoid this problem.
What problem is that?
Defining group selection, because there is a misunderstanding of this term. And I get into this debate with J-Man over it. debate. He's convinced I'm wrong, and I'm convinced he doesn't understand.
He's merely mistaken, you're saying?
Well, it's like it's like he's trying to prevent the it's like the ether. Yeah, there's an ether. But if you say, well, the physicists don't want to talk about an ether because that in the history of physics, that term means something. Right?
Right,
And it means something that isn't true. Right? But it doesn't mean the general idea that there's a substance, right? There's some background to the universe, and that
right,
there is the closest term we have to represent it, can't be redefined to correctly describe the quantum background, because that's what it is. It's an ether, right? What's the difference? Well, the quantum background is another way of saying the ether, right? Well, but we used to talk about gravity this way. Did we say we can't use the word gravity because Newton defined gravity at the global scale rather than the galactic scale, right? I mean,
right,
right.
right.
So why should we throw out the term group selection? Because some people who originally used the term don't, but it's a operational term, right? Group
Yes,
selection. So let's just define it correctly. So
right.
so I'm gonna
It's
just
an
make sure.
interesting function because it's like the group evolutionary strategy at a precognitive level.
Right. What we mean by group selection is that the tendency of groups to favor some traits, right? Some behaviors or needs or advance some traits tends to produce more of that in the group. Not always, but it tends to. And it tends to more so when you're in numbers around 1,000 to a few
Right,
thousand.
social groups.
And the reason is that the population is small enough to exit a defect,
Yep,
and at the same time as amplify a benefit.
right,
And so, um, we're all white folk, but whiteness as we know it, which is really white, like you and I are, that's only 20,000 years old. Ruddiness is old, right? I mean, but Middle Eastern white, we don't know how old that is. That might be 40,000 years old or 30,000 years old. Yeah, really.
okay,
I don't know off the top of my head. I only know white.
right.
And white, light hair and blue eyes. I mean, that's less than 20,000 years old. So, is there group selection? Well, obviously, but what does that mean? Um, and I think what it means is that group selection is a proposed mechanism of evolution in which natural selection acts at the level of the group instead of the level of the individual or gene.
Right.
Well, I think, as that's stated, that's probably wrong. It operates at the individual of the individual gene, but that doesn't mean it is generally expressed in the group. In other words, groups tend to express advantageous behaviors.
Right. So groups select for individual that modifies the composition of the group over time to a favorable pattern.
Right. So here's where it comes from. It comes from a pretty obvious mistake. They argue. All right. So this is this fucking post-war bullshit. Or
That one sentence is going to cost you so much.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's just this desire to make nature have intent
Ah,
and have moral intent is just hysterical. Early authors argued that the behavior of animals could affect their survival and reproduction as groups, speaking, for instance, of actions for the good of the species. Well, how the fuck would they know it was for the good of the species? Right? In the 30s, again, that's not quite post-war, but you know what I mean? It's after 1920.
right.
Or proposed the concept of kin selection, a form of altruism from the gene center view of evolution, arguing that all animals should sacrifice for their relatives, thereby implying that they should not sacrifice for non-relatives. Okay, well, we know that animals sacrifice based on the degree of kinship. Like
Right.
it's like gravity, right? Gravity is, the square root of the distance, right?
Right.
Right. So the same thing happens for kin selection is you're going to sacrifice for your mate or your children, less so for your sibling, more
Yep.
maybe for your parents, less so for your siblings, less so for their siblings, their
Yep.
children, etc. So it's pretty, and I guess it's a sort of 6 degrees thing, right?
Yes.
So I'm using very colloquial terms here, sorry. But from the mid 1960s, Smith, Hamilton, Williams, and Dawkins argued that it acted natural selected action primarily at the gene on the basis of mathematical models that would not altruistically sacrifice fitness for the sake of the group unless it would ultimately increase the likelihood of passing on their genes. Well, that's correct. A consensus emerged that group selection did not occur, including special. Right. Well, that's just fucking word games, right? Well, it doesn't mean.
It's like what they said was group selection does not occur in group selection. Is
Well,
that
what they mean is the group doesn't think about shit. Excuse me, I did it again. I did it again because I'm frustrated by what I consider stupid. Right. So selection occurs within a group.
Yes.
In other words, the spread of an advantage occur. That's what evolution does. It spreads advantages. So of course there's group selection.
Wait,
Right?
and the issue is there's no group selecting.
There's no
individuals are behaving.
Right.
The group is not selecting, so it has a misnomer built into the cake.
And so this is like I'd say, it's like the same thing with the ether. Well, I don't know, the term is great. Do groups select? No. Does selection within groups perform the equivalent of group selection? Yes.
Right.
Right. So it's just very frustrating. So how do I tie that back?
Right. It's like silly people get hung up on silly things.
Well, I mean, the intellectuals get into malinvestment very easy.
There you have it. That was well said. And no cussing.
It's very hard for me not to cuss about these things.
I must say it does merit some cussing.
Now let's take here's a great example, right? Now Darwin, who I'm distantly related to.
Just saying.
OCD runs in the family.
You're probably related to Kevin Bacon too.
No.
It is like that came up with the 6 degrees thing.
Oh, I got where you were going from, but I'm like, I don't know how I could.
I had to mention it.
I remember when Alora and I were looking through our genealogy, and we realized that our families have intermarried. Like, I don't know, so many times, it's ridiculous.
Oh my. Sorry to have distracted you, Mr. Doolittle.
Well, I mean, I like having this because we just educated the audience on something, right? I mean, if the audience caught that, it's worth explaining.
That's right.
So there's no selection at group level, right?
That's right.
Right, but there is selection. The individual selection within groups tends to be expressed in groups, across groups, right? I mean, within groups. I don't know why that's complicated. I just
It's not.
I don't know why. And so
It's
anyway, so we've got to address this issue here. We got to talk about natural selection. And there's two basic. We have the same problem here in scale. We have wow, there's a lot of properties here. I think I lost Dr. Brad. You know, I thought I heard that sound in the background where the UFO is hovering over the place and they beam the guy up instantaneously, but his house didn't vibrate. So I'm thinking that it's really, you'd think you want to put families, tribes, and nations ahead of classes. You do. It's really hard. This is one of those things is how do you describe this from one direction because you have to talk about every other one.
why there he is.
I just told the audience that I didn't hear the sound of the UFO making your house vibrate and beaming you up. It wasn't that you'd been abducted.
No, sir.
What happened? You just hit the wrong button?
Just froze up on me. I don't know what happened. Then you disappeared and then you came back. Here we go.
I'm hosting the meeting. So you disappeared and came back.
Oh, I see.
So
That's okay.
the aliens didn't abduct me. There was a chance they abducted you.
It was
All right.
narrowly missed.
I'm feeling really good, but I'm this one I think is gonna be hard. So what are the dimensions of selection here? Right? What are the dimensions? Because there's
There's a spectrum. I like that.
individual. That's families, right?
Yeah.
Here's group. There's group. Times, tribes. So where did we go? Where did we get? Where did we put the selection? Sexual Where do we do social sexual? Did we keep that anywhere? Where are we? We're about.
We have sexual selection above there.
Yeah, but I remember I said, market value, sexual market value. Where's the market value?
That's down below.
I don't think so. Did I erase it?
Hmm. There you go.
Duh. Okay, so it goes up here.
Hmm. It's like individual selection occurs by maximizing potential returns on investment.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Right?
Yeah.
I don't know how they say class, clan. So they're talking about. I see that's the other dimension of conflict.
How so?
Whether selection refers to the choice of mate or the result, the genetic of choice. Right, so
I look at it also as there's a selective process on whether or not you're willing to pay a price to supply a good based on kinship preference. Does that make sense?
I can see how there's a relation. I can't put it together. Try a little more.
You're going to be asked to supply a good for a subsection of the social group, and you will be more likely to supply that good if they're closely related to you than if they're not. Because you're willing to pay a higher price for the same good if the person is closely related to you. You'll bear the burden of it.
Is that true?
Well, this is an altruistic function.
Yeah, which price are you talking about? Because what we see is people will often mate for novelty.
Yeah, that's different than the we don't count the price men pay for that. We're talking about what real sacrifice that men make to that they would prefer not to make.
Oh, I see. I don't know if this is true. Because I haven't looked at it, and a lot of these things tended to be debunked.
Okay.
If you want to get pissed, read Culture Critique again. Absolutely make you get pissed when you realize how much damage one guy. I mean, I know Freud did a lot of damage. That's common. But we ought to put Bose up there. I mean, he's the equivalent of evil in social science.
Okay.
It was all made up. The same thing with the Frankfurt School. It was all made up. The same thing with Marx. It's all made up. The same thing with Freud. It's all made up. It's just mythicism. Traditional Semitic mythicism. You tell a story, you make a mythos, that you wish was your history in order to encourage behavior, instead of writing history, right, to inform your behavior that's correspondent with the universe. It's exasperating. Anyway, so how did I get off on that rant there?
You said you weren't sure that this is true.
All right, so here's an example that we used to go by back in the day. I don't know if it's Hawaiians. What group is it? There's a group in the Pacific region who favors women with squarer bodies, or thicker bodies, right? Which produce men with thicker bodies. I can't remember if it's Polynesian. I can't remember what it is.
Okay.
It should be. I feel stupid not knowing it off the top of my head because I can, I've probably talked about it a dozen times, right?
Right.
But so what happened is that was their aesthetic.
Right.
Subject to Western media aesthetic, their aesthetic changed.
Oh,
Does that make sense?
yeah.
I don't actually know if that's true. I know that was
Mythos.
a claim that went around in the sciences. I probably could go look it up while we're talking here. I just don't want to. I don't want another distraction. So it's not, that's just an example, but we know other examples exist. We know selecting for whiteness exists. We know
Right.
selecting for neoteny exists. We know selecting for blue eyes exists, right? I mean, we know these selection biases. We know blonde hair bias exists. And these are all biases we know. We know symmetry exists. We know the gracile form exists, right? We know all these things we know are true.
Right.
Actually, there's some really interesting class and race differences in those biases.
Hmm.
Right? So those are true. So the question is, does selection accumulate at the group? Yes. Right. So that's what we have to make the point here is that selection.
Individual selection accumulates at the group level. Yep. Selection bias. Yep. Yeah.
Right. That's what we're trying to get
Very
across.
reasonable.
I think I just read out of gas.
Uh-oh.
I don't think I have to. I don't want to have to put this in. Now we're gonna deal with the ergo natural selection. And that is scale versus expansion, elimination of bads, expand. All right, that's the
This is a funny paradox here because it's individual selectivity operates at the social scale.
right. Well, this is the problem. It's like we always talk serialization, and disambiguation by serialization and operationalization, right? And so what we're saying is there's all selection is at individual scale because that's the only place either the genes are interacting or the person makes the choice for the genes to interact. But that doesn't mean that selection group behavior doesn't influence
Right.
the choice of selection. Because most of the time, so this is because even though that even within this one,
Because there's social biases that are being enforced by the group.
this is all weird stuff. But see, we're so isolated from reproductive pressures now. In other words, we're expanding dysgenia. The argument is if you want to have a lot of women would like to be 5'9" blonde, fit blondes, right? Right. But who has the most children? 5'4" fit, reasonably fit brunettes. Why? Because men's attraction is actually driven by the need to protect children, not women. So the dominance feeling expression, right, is more amplified when you're dealing with a woman that's more neotenous than a woman that's more basically athletic, stronger, larger, fit. So you have these problems. So you do get populations that scale up and scale down, and they scale up and scale down partly because of that in the past, and partly because of it just takes fewer calories to keep a smaller person alive. Anyway, so individual family can section occurs. Selection.
Space. Thank you. There you go. You need a period for that sentence. There's a relational relatedness in that second bullet.
Here,
Yeah. Degree of relation. Relatedness.
moving this down. Just when those two become the same. I started out with. I get out of this. Well, I get out of the problem by starting with that, right?
Okay.
Curt, come on, focus, get this one more done. I hear lunch calling me.
in the population, in a population. That doesn't make sense, that sentence. The consequence of individual selection at scale over time. Okay, I'm sorry, I misread it. That's an error. It functions. That works. Now, do you mean resulting in group selection? There you go. There you go. Not spelled right. And you need a space there in group.
You sure that's spelled right? I'm just,
You missed. I missed it. Damn you, Curt. Okay.
this informs class. We're done, right? We can be done now for today.
Yeah.
Because that just mean what classes do is evidence this distributions. Classes evidence the distribution rates. Selected for elements. That's
Yep.
that's gonna hurt somebody. I don't know.
Yeah, I know. We'll fix it next time though, and it will still be have a pinch to it.
That's what it is. It's on grammar. So it's those three. That one. Wait a minute, did I just do this again? No, I got 6 there. 7, 8. All right. I'd say
Oh, work.
I'm not sure I can do this without you. I'd say I could try, but I don't think I can.
We'll do it again. It'll work. Save it.
All right, do your thing.
Well, everybody, including Uncle Kenny, hit like, subscribe, and don't forget the notification bell and leave the comments, especially regarding my not cursing, my withholding my interruptions, which has improved quite a lot. I'm sure you'll agree. And then your general comments, especially about the discussion about transistors. It's all very good, and I enjoyed another working session with you, Curt.
All right, love you, man. You have a great day.
We'll chat later.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.